I do think that we have had some particularly untrustworthy politicians. Donald Trump comes to mind. His relationship with the truth is tenuous at best. One of the key moments in recent history was when we all saw the poor Queen sitting on her own at the funeral. And then we find out later they were having a party in number 10 the night before. And I think people were just fed up. If you impose a rule on Wikipedia that required us to hire thousands of moderators, it kind of breaks the role of trust. As long as people are interested in having some fun writing an encyclopedia together, I think we'll be here.
Hello and welcome to Ways to Change the World. I'm Krishnan Guru-Murthy, and this is the podcast in which we talk to extraordinary people about the big ideas in their lives and the events that have helped shape them. Today's guest is the man who created the online resource where the podcast team here normally go first when doing research on guests coming on to the show, Wikipedia, the free digital encyclopedia that just about everyone in the Western world goes to if they need to quickly know anything. It's been going for almost 25 years, determinedly democratic, non-profit and user-run, but increasingly under attack now by right-wing influencers, Republican politicians in the US, and Elon Musk for being biased with an overly progressive ideology. And now AI models like ChatGPT are parking their tanks firmly on Wikipedia's lawn, claiming to be the real font of all knowledge. Wikipedia calls them conversational chatbots. Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How do you want to change the world, having already changed it?
Well, I think that what I've done has changed the world, interestingly enough. When I think about how to change the world, I tend to think very small about taking small steps and experimentation. In the book, we talk about if we want to fix things, we're going to need to do a lot of experimentation. So it's not one thing. It's let's try lots of things.
Yeah, the book is The 7 Rules of Trust, why it is today's most essential superpower. And there's a series of steps that you lay out in the book. But how do you think that has applied to Wikipedia's experience? If you think back to its founding, people used to joke about you, make fun of you. People would go to incorrect Wikipedia entries and say, well, look, this is nonsense. This is what happens when you get anybody and his dog writing Wikipedia. But you've gone from that to, as we say, the place most people end up looking pretty much every day when they want to know anything. And that required a huge leap of trust.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that is where a lot of the lessons, for the book came from, is the experience of thinking about trust in the context of Wikipedia. First of all, Wikipedia has always been very trusting. There was this sort of open offer to people come and take part and come and join us and let's write an encyclopedia together. And I had a belief, which has proven to be true, that most people are basically very decent and want to do something productive and useful with their time. And people really rallied to that call. And, slowly but surely over the years, we had to think about things like, okay, how do we improve what we're doing? How do we, so it's things like we need to have reliable sources. We need to be really neutral because that's a core component of trust. And so all of these lessons over the years added up. And then when I look around the world and I see that we're in this crisis of trust, we see, if you look at the Edelman Trust Barometer surveys, decline in trust in politicians, decline in trust in journalism, business, each other. Meanwhile, we've kind of got some trust, some good stuff going on with trust in our community that I think we can share with others.
So the first thing is trust other people and they will have a reason to trust you.
Yeah, and I think this is, we all know this pretty well in our personal lives and in our experience, which is if you say to somebody, I'll just trust you to do that, they'll generally live up to that. And that's important.
What do you think the level of trust is, though, in Wikipedia? Because if I think about my own use of Wikipedia, I use it as a guide. I kind of assume that not everything on there is absolutely right, that it's a curated page in which the emphases might be right or wrong. I look at my own page and I think, well, that's not what I would have said about me. So when I look at other people's pages, I think, well, maybe that's wrong too,
Yeah, definitely. I would say the level of trust probably varies across different topics. It varies depending on how people feel about that topic. If you want to know about some chemical reaction, you probably would trust Wikipedia to be very, very good, and it probably is. And if you wanted to know about some controversial issue, well, how much would you trust it? Well, that partly depends on you, for better or worse, right? It may be you don't trust it because, sadly, you don't like the facts of reality, right? And so therefore you feel emotionally sort of resistant to it. Or you may see it and you may go, actually, this seems a bit biased, and actually there seems to be something going on here. So it varies. I mean, it's a dialogue, it's a discourse. I think the important thing for us has always been, we always need to think about how can we do better. So if somebody says, oh, Wikipedia, it's been taken over by a woke mob, well, that's just not true. Like, that's just simply not true. If you say, Wikipedia has a problem with bias in certain areas because they follow the mainstream media, which has a certain bias, et cetera, okay, now that's a conversation we can grapple with, right? That's very, there's some interesting things to be had there. But, if some people say, I've actually been getting yelled at a lot on Twitter by UFO believers, right, who are angry that Wikipedia doesn't take them more seriously. And I'm like, I mean, we're pretty kind about the whole thing. We sort of lay out some evidence and we talk about the this and the that and the history and all of this. And yeah, we don't go all in for your conspiracy theory because it's not justified to do so. And that's okay. And
who
they
are the
feel
arbiters of
biased.
that?
So the Wikipedia community, which is a bunch of geeks, really, they tend to be quite smart. They tend to be not particularly political people. They're really passionate about sharing knowledge and reliable sources and all of these kinds of things. We try to remain as open as possible. So anybody who sees something in Wikipedia and they, that doesn't seem right, great, come and join us, come and talk to us, become one of us and get involved, because that's hugely important in terms of getting, as human beings, at the truth. You have to have that sort of open curiosity, questioning spirit to say, okay, let's see, what can we make better here?
But if you go onto any Wikipedia page and you look at the chat that's gone on behind the page, you will see some sort of discussions and disagreements.
Oh yeah, definitely
going on.
Yeah.
So how and who works out who wins, or is it just whoever's most recent?
I mean, it's a variety of mechanisms. So it's often, I mean, in one very narrow sense, it's whoever's most recent. But in many, many cases, that dialogue produces a consensus, a compromise. So for example, the article, some people may say, A, and other people say B, and then they're both producing sources, and the article ends up saying, the two leading theories are A and B, and here are the reasons given for that. So we call it going meta, like step up a level. We can't take sides if it's a legitimate dispute. We can just describe the dispute. And that actually works really well in most cases.
What kind of behavior on Wikipedia have you had to change in order to improve your trust?
Well, I mean, I think we always had the same spirit. So we haven't really had to change our behavior per se. Like, people are basically decent and nice. I would say we had to, You do describe yourself as a pathological optimist, don't you? I am. Yes, I am. And I always have to have a few pessimists around to keep me in check. But yeah, so I mean, I can give one example of something that did change. So we have a policy about what we call BLPs. We have way too many acronyms, like many communities do. Biographies of living persons, where if there's something negative in a biography, if it has to have a source, and if it doesn't have a source, you should remove it immediately and then go and talk about it on the talk page. You don't leave it in while you figure out what to do. And that was a change. Like, before it would be common, somebody would say, oh, this says this negative thing. Is that right? Let's have a discussion about that. And now we're like, no, take it out immediately. And that was a good change. Over the years, we've definitely, I would say, matured in our nuance around a lot of things. So just an example I was looking at a couple of days ago is the question of, the names of family members of controversial people who aren't themselves in the news, and the sensitivity around their privacy. And in some cases, you would say, well, actually, it's quite relevant to the biography. In other cases, you're like, well, it doesn't really matter who the parents were because it doesn't seem to have any impact. So you wouldn't list their parents' names. And so those are the kinds of things that we've become, more nuanced over time as we saw examples and we're like, oh, okay, hold on a second. Actually, because we do think for biographies, like neutrality is really important, even for very controversial people. Sometimes people are like, oh, but how are you neutral about Hitler? And it's like, it's quite easy to be neutral about Hitler. And that doesn't mean you describe him in glowing terms. It means you just tell what he did, and that's bad enough. Like, you don't need to add a rant against Hitler on the page. So, I would say the biggest change, has just been becoming more experienced and more mature over the years.
How important is it, do you think, to the trust of an organization like yours that it's a not-for-profit?
I think it matters. I think it matters, though, not so much because the reader actually knows or cares. I mean, oftentimes people have no idea. It's just like magically appears on the internet. They don't know where it comes from. But it's certainly important for the volunteer community who really pour their hearts into it. I think it's more than for-profit versus non-profit. I think what's really important is that we're not advertising driven. We don't have ads in Wikipedia. And if we did, that would lead to certain consequences. Questions people would have is like, is the content sponsored content? You would have questions about, we would have questions like, we are really very intense about user privacy. And so we collect almost no data. We have very little tracking data. We don't do all the kinds of things that are quite normal online in terms of trying to figure out who your readers are so you can target ads at them. We just don't care who they are. Like, great, And the donation model, that we are not funded by governments, we're not funded by a handful of major donors. We're funded largely, we do have some major donors, and that's much appreciated, but we're largely funded by the small donors, like, people giving their £20 a month or whatever it is, £20 a year. That's the backbone of the support for Wikipedia. And then that gives us the incentives inside the organization. We're not thinking about, how do we please our advertisers? How do we please our wealthy donors? We say, how do we please our readers? How do we please the general public who donate? Because, our best fundraising pitch is always, basically you use Wikipedia all the time, you should probably chip in. And people go, yeah, you know what? I love it. I should chip in. And they do.
How different would it be, do you think, if you were Wikipedia billionaire Jimmy Wales and one of the tech bros who suddenly become part of the sort of the global monarchy right now?
I don't know. That's kind of a weird thing to think about. It's sort of, I do have a certain role. And actually, I feel like one of the great things about Wikipedia is on internet public policy issues, we often have a voice that gives regulators and legislators some pause, because it's quite easy to just go, just YouTube wants to make more money or whatever like that. But when we say, hold on, you should be careful not to damage Wikipedia, and here's the ways that this regulation could impact us negatively, they do pause and they say, oh, hold on a second, we don't want to break Wikipedia. Like, that's really important. We call that the Wikipedia rule. Like, don't break Wikipedia when you're thinking about internet regulation.
How do you feel about the power of those tech giants in the world right now?
I'm pretty relaxed about it. I think the power is sometimes overblown, overstated. Obviously, all big companies have a certain amount of power, and so on and so forth. But you can think about the power, but you can also think about them standing on stage at the inauguration, looking slightly like hostages, and realizing they felt a need to go there to appease Trump. That's power. And Trump loves that kind of power. And it's unfortunate,
But do you see a concentration in the hands of a relatively small group of people of what most people are looking at, whether it's social media, television, all kind of going into these giants, giving them a huge amount of power?
Yeah, so I think we can be a bit nuanced about it and talk about different areas. So, for example, in the U.S., a huge amount of local TV stations and local news is controlled by a handful of companies. and they have top-down direction over what gets said and what gets published. And it's like actually they've been increasing that centralized control of the local news. Okay, that's concerning. Like that doesn't seem like a great thing to me. Meanwhile, if you think about social media, it's like, okay, there's centralized control maybe of some aspects of it, but still it's like it's incredibly diverse. It's like YouTube has all kinds of stuff on it, and people who, I'm sure there's videos on there ranting against Google and YouTube and all of that. And so that's a different kind of question, really. It's not quite, they don't have any control over the path of ideas. Sort of the antitrust kind of business kind of issues, those are really probably more about the advertising market and things like that.
But Twitter is the big one that has changed in its character, isn't it? Over years, and has changed in its character since hundreds of millions of people signed up. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, it's certainly, Elon Musk has made a pretty clean break with the past in terms of the way they handle moderation, for example. And it was never great. I have, said about Twitter moderation in the olden days, like it was pretty bad. Like you could complain about somebody attacking you and saying things that are clearly against the terms of service, and they would kind of not do anything about it. I mean, I once emailed Jack Dorsey and said, well, look at this horrible thing. He said, oh, don't worry, Jimmy, we'll sort that out. Like, sorry about that. And I'm like, that's not really my point. I know you and I can email you. It's like, what about the teenager who's getting abuse? Like your systems aren't good enough. And now they're not just not good enough, they're completely destroyed. And so I think that's a problem.
And what about the algorithm itself? I mean, I certainly feel, looking at my feed, it's rigged, it's right wing, it's kind of throwing me a certain type of material. How do we as users kind of detect, identify, know what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a real problem. It's a problem of a lack of transparency. It's a problem of, there's a lot of talk by Elon about anti-censorship and free speech, but there's clearly a bit of a thumb on the scale there that is problematic in lots of ways. But also, I think a lot of users are leaving. I think one of the reasons Twitter feels like it's become sort of more right-wing is because a lot of people of different viewpoints have been like, I'm out of here. Like, I don't like this place anymore. I know personally, I still have a Twitter account. I use it some. I use it a lot less than I used to. And that's not so much about left versus right. It's just unpleasant. Like, it's no fun. And, you sort of feel like, oh, I still need to be there because I do send, there's an audience there and all that. So for professional reasons, it still matters, but I don't really feel like engaging. Also, I've got a few friends on there and people I talk to, and that's fine. And I actually think one of the biggest things that people can do is basically say, I don't like this. I'm not going to use it anymore. It's like, it's not okay to have a platform that is this sort of horrible. I'd rather go somewhere else. Where
does it matter if you don't have another platform that is as big? I mean, you started WC Social. I don't know how big it is.
Small. Yeah, it's a pilot project.
And lots of other people have tried various things. There's Blue Sky. There's half a dozen other social. They don't have the critical mass, and therefore they don't have the same effects.
But I do think that's interesting. But I think we should also remember. I remember when MySpace looked like it was going to become a monopoly in social networking, and it's completely gone now. I remember when Facebook was more dominant than it is today. These things can change. And, I don't think, with Blue Sky or Threads from Facebook, they're not doing that because out of a charitable instinct. They see a business opportunity that Twitter is basically in a weak position. The advertisers have fled largely. The business model doesn't make sense. How long can they carry on running a platform that even the people who are heavy users kind of hate? It's not a good business.
I mean, transparency is one of your rules.
Yeah.
So how could you apply transparency? If you were in charge of X or Facebook, what would you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard problem. So social media. So one of the things with Wikipedia that makes things easier is purpose. Another one of my rules, which is we're trying to write an encyclopedia. So we're not a wide open free speech forum. And I've said that since the beginning. It's like, yes, we want to have a discourse, a dialogue, but we're trying to write an encyclopedia. So it's not the place to come and rant about whatever. Whereas social media kind of is the place to come and rant about whatever. And so that means the challenges for moderation are much harder. I mean, I would recommend that they look into more features like the notes feature. So on Twitter now, if somebody posts something, people can fact check it. And then and there's a voting process and all that, and it's reasonably transparent and controlled by the community. It's not transparent enough. I'd like to see more transparency there. And that actually is a good thing. Like sometimes it does prevent like blatant misinformation from going viral because, under it, there's a note saying, like, here's some links to check out. This isn't really true. And I think they should pursue more things like that because, the problem with what they were doing before was it just wasn't scalable. Like, you can't check every tweet coming in. Like, it's impossible. Same thing, I have some sympathy for when Facebook has a challenge around misinformation floating around on the platform. It's like, well, that's just the users talking to each other. And it's not really, I don't think we want a world in which Mark Zuckerberg gets to decide what's true and what isn't. At the same time, there's this problem of abuse and sort of really bad behavior and toxic stuff. It's hard, but transparency would help.
And do you think, I think you've been asked, I've asked you over the years, should governments get involved and regulate? And you've always said no.
Yeah, I think
do you still think it's a no, even though social media is so powerful and having such a large effect on our politics?
I mean, I do think broadly it's no. And one of the reasons is it's really hard to put forward a proposed law or regulation that would actually solve problems and not just cause problems. If you said, well, it should be illegal to post false content, well, that's really hard, right? Because somebody's got to decide what's true and what's false. And in free societies, we don't think that's normally the job of a government to decide. And it's not even indirectly a job for the government to penalize a company because they didn't decide in the right way, et cetera, et cetera. So, I think you can say, some of the things like, it's necessary to have some sort of a reporting mechanism and a way to appeal a ban and all those things, which they already do. So it's like, okay, what's the regulation for exactly? I think what I'm much more interested in is, preserving the ability for competition. And I think sometimes regulation can make it harder for new competitors to emerge. Like here in the UK, the Online Safety Act, it has a framework in mind, which is what I call the feudal model, which is the platform owns the platform and they're like the master, and all the serfs live on the platform and they follow the rules of the master and so on. And it doesn't contemplate a much more democratic situation where actually the rules are made by the users. Like this is the Wikipedia model, and they have the tools they need to control the space they're in and so forth. So if you impose a rule on Wikipedia that required us to hire thousands of moderators, it kind of breaks the role of trust, which is we trust our community and they trust us and all of that. And so we have to be really careful that we're not sort of locking in a clearly not scalable and bad system by passing regulations that say, well, if you have more than X million users, you have to do X, Y, and Z, even though maybe you don't have to do those things. Maybe you only have to do those things if you've got a broken model to start with.
And you couldn't, for example, regulate for neutrality then?
Yeah, no, I don't see how you could. I mean, you could sort of demand...
Because if the algorithm at the moment is biased to the right wing or the left wing on X, couldn't you tell X, you've got to stop doing that? Let people choose it if they want.
You could, but I think Elon Musk would say, we're allowing all content that isn't illegal. And so then would a regulation like that make it possible to say, you know what, on our platform, we actually don't want racism. We want to say, you're not welcome here if you're going to post racist commentary. And someone's going to say, well, like, you're not being neutral. Like that is a set of ideas and I want to put forward my ideas and I'm going to write about them. And okay, well, I think too bad, go somewhere else. And I also think that isn't necessarily neutral. And so regulating for neutrality might make it harder for people to do that sort of thing. So it's hard. I mean, I think we can just say, I think we should always take when government regulation is at stake, what on sort of U.S. First Amendment law, you would say strict scrutiny. Like is there any other way to achieve the goal? Is there a compelling interest? Those are the kinds of questions, not just, oh, this sort of sucks, let's regulate it, because then you get into really murky areas. I mean, we've seen in this country like quite an interesting debate about Graham Lineham getting arrested at the airport, and then now they've sort of dropped all the charges and apologized. I think they apologized, but anyway, they've said they're going to stop doing that sort of thing, which I think is definitely the right answer. Because, I mean, whatever, he posted some stupid stuff on Twitter. Fine.
And so come to the next sort of lesson for trust, if you like. You mentioned sort of having a purpose, which was to say we are an encyclopedia, when lots of people were saying, well, you're not a real encyclopedia. So how important was it to say this is what we are?
Oh, yes.
In order to persuade people that that's what you are.
Yeah. Hugely important. Because, like the idea, if I say encyclopedia article about the Eiffel Tower, you immediately have an idea of what that is. And we pretty much have the same idea. I should tell the history and where it is and cultural impact, and there should be a picture or two. We know what that's going to look like, which made it possible for people to cooperate in a way. If we said, oh, it's not an encyclopedia article, it's just an article, it's a blog post, it's a whatever it might be, then people could be all over the map. You wouldn't be able to settle in, like, how do you set rules? What is it? This is why, that purpose, it's just clearly identified from day one, has enabled the community to sort of say, okay, right, now we know what we're doing, we know what we're here for. And, that kind of idea can be applied in all kinds of contexts. A lot of companies, it's quite important that they have a mission statement that's not just some fancy words that some consultants came up with, but they actually need to understand, like, what are we trying to do here in this business? Like, what are the things we do and the things we don't do? What do we specialize in? What are we going to get really good at? Because without that, how do you make decisions? You're just all over the map.
You mentioned the attacks that you're under, over whether there's a woke takeover. Now, you mentioned in the book, Elon Musk has had this sort of defund Wikipedia campaign, and he wants to set up a rival, which you think is sort of a bad campaign strategy on his part. Yeah. But I mean, how do you persuade people or demonstrate that you've not been taken over by some?
I mean, I think the proof is in the pudding. I mean, right now I'm leading a neutral point of view working group within the organization, bringing in, like, we're talking with our research team, who are coming up with proposals and ideas. We want to encourage more research into this question. What's the best way to research? Because just vague accusations out in the public aren't, like, whatever.
Are they having an effect, do you think? Having those accusations?
I mean, in certain segments. I mean, I think the truth is most people who use Wikipedia and read Wikipedia realize it doesn't make sense. I mean, somebody sort of on Twitter sort of came at me with the classic gotcha question, what is a woman? And there was this right-wing documentary about it, and the big punchline at the end is that a woman is an adult human female, which is apparently controversial. And I'm like, well, at Wikipedia, what it says is a woman is an adult human female. And then further down in the entry, we do talk about trans issues in society and whatever, biology and chromosomes and all of that stuff. And I think most people would look at that and go, oh, actually, this article isn't crazy woke left. It's got some interesting stuff in it, and it sort of addresses the issue in a very thoughtful and calm way. So I think most people who read Wikipedia realize, like, oh, actually, that doesn't make sense. Even if you also might say, oh, well, in certain cases, I read this article, it seemed very biased. Yeah, okay, that happens too. And so part of my work, these days is saying to our community and sort of saying, why don't we just double down on neutrality? Like, let's be really, really thoughtful about it. Let's have a big conversation about areas where we might be failing in neutrality, where, some of the questions that are valid questions is, are we failing to look at a wide enough range of sources? And where might we do that? And I actually think technology can help us with that, just by helping us go through articles and say, oh, look, in this set of articles, we only cite, The Guardian, but not The Telegraph.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Let's take a closer look at that.
It's quite a challenge, though, isn't it, sourcing on Wikipedia? Because, what is mainstream media changes. And there are some media outlets that have got huge numbers of viewers or views, which are peddling lies.
No, I mean, I think there is this, we're quite old-fashioned, I would say, in our approach to thinking about, what is low-quality media and how do you handle that? And it has to do with things like corrections policies and are the stories inflammatory, or are they just reporting in a straight way, and so on and so forth. And then you have to sort of be thoughtful about that. I mean, I think we can both say, just to give a very UK answer, The Guardian is a quality newspaper that is left-leaning, and The Telegraph is a quality newspaper that's right-leaning, and they're both legitimate sources. And you wouldn't say of either of them, this is low-quality propaganda crap. I mean, some people would say that, but they're mistaken. At the same time, you can look at, other sources, particularly online, more new media sources, and some of them are just terrible. Like, they're just not good enough.
And so, because one of your, I mean, you talk about, the need for civility and not to take sides. Do you think it's important to take action against people who break those rules?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's, when people come to Wikipedia with a warrior mentality, right? And they are clearly, I mean, we have an expression, not here to write an encyclopedia. And so somebody who comes in who thinks, okay, my job here is to be an activist and to promote whatever point of view, I hope you find it kind of uncomfortable. And I hope you actually, with a little bit of experience, go, oh, wow, actually, this isn't this isn't a blog, this isn't Twitter, this isn't whatever. This is something different, and actually, I kind of like it. It's actually better. Like, I'm engaging in interesting conversations with people who maybe I disagree with, but I can see as human beings who are really nice to me, even though I came in kind of like a jerk. And that's what you hope for. Some people probably can't learn that, and they just are going to get themselves blocked, but that's what we hope for.
Let's talk about the impact of AI. I mean, I've got kids 18 and 20. I've seen their progression through reading Wikipedia pages when they were doing their school homework to being on ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Even though ChatGPT uses Wikipedia as a primary source.
Huge, yeah.
What do you think is the impact and the threat from AI to the Wikimedia model?
Yeah, well, I mean, so far we haven't seen a huge amount of impact. Just to give one example, now Google has their AI summaries at the top of a lot of search results. Well, a Pew study showed that about 3% of the links in the first 10 of traditional search results are to Wikipedia, and AI summaries link to us about 6% of the time. So we get a lot more links by Google, but those links at the top, people don't click through them nearly as much because they've already got the answer that they asked. You ask Google, how old is Tom Cruise? It just tells you, and there's the link. But the net has canceled out, and so our traffic is roughly the same. It's just unclear at the moment, but it seems not impactful. And this is very different from some tech websites, and apparently some news websites are experiencing big drop-offs in traffic, just depending on what their subject matter is and things like that.
But do you think that's going to carry on? I mean, couldn't we be moving to a world where Google isn't the default? And that people just go straight to their ChatGPT app or whichever large language model they end up using?
I think it depends on the use case, right? So I think here's the issue. Like, if you, at least right now, so I can't predict what's going to happen in 10 years' time. So certainly in 10 years' time, if ChatGPT has perfect sort of accuracy on everything, then yeah, people probably will be like, oh, well, I don't use Wikipedia anymore because this is just as good or better. Okay, that's it. That's the future. It'll be a shame, but that's technology. For the foreseeable future, though, the hallucination problem with large language models, which Gary Marcus, a well-known AI researcher, argues, I think persuasively, is it's not just a temporary bug. It's like endemic to how these models work. Like, it's not really possible to fix it. And certainly there was a lot of hype before GPT-5 came out, which once it came out, people were like, oh, actually, it's still full of nonsense, right? And it hallucinates quite a lot. And it hallucinates on less popular topics. If you say, tell me the biography of Tom Cruise, it's probably pretty decent. I always ask, who is Kate Garvey, my wife? Because she's not a famous person, but she's known a bit. And it's pretty much always wrong. And it's pretty much always plausible. And that's what we see, at Wikipedia when we look and investigate this. It's like, it's not good enough. Like, we can't use it to help us write Wikipedia because it frankly unapologetically lies a lot. And so at least for now, we don't foresee that as being a problem. And also, I think we also should remember the use cases are very different. So if you want to say, as I did use ChatGPT for this, and it was quite good, I'm renting an RV with my kids and we're going to drive around the Southwest in America. What should we see? Can you make an itinerary? And it makes a great itinerary and it tells you what the things are you'll see. And great, like that's wonderful. You wouldn't use Wikipedia for that. Like you might use Wikipedia if you're like, I actually want to know a detailed history of a certain, national monument. Like how did it be designated that and blah, 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 the history of the national parks. But you wouldn't use it to create an itinerary. You wouldn't use it for cooking. So give me a recipe for these ingredients. And those are the most popular use cases for these chatbots is, people ask a question or they want to interact with some body of knowledge. Super interesting, but not a direct competitor for Wikipedia.
It's not really doing any of your 7 lessons for trust either, is it though?
No, I mean, I think this is something that I think the AI companies should really take to heart some of these lessons, which is to say, like, if you're saying the next model that comes out, we've solved the hallucination problem, and then it comes out and people are like, no, you didn't, people will lose trust. And, does it do what it says on the tin? Is it like a super important test?
And there's virtually no transparency as well.
Virtually no transparency, yeah. Although in the case of AI, it's actually very hard because how it processes the data is all super mathematical in a way that's impossible to really understand. It's sort of like, how did you decide your favorite color is green? Like, you have no idea how you decided that, right? You can't really explain it.
And do you know how much AI is relying on Wikipedia as a source?
A bit. There's a few numbers. I think in terms of the sheer size of the content that makes up, apparently Reddit's number 1 because I think there's more words in Reddit, and Wikipedia number 2. But then if you read millions of Reddit posts, you're probably mainly learning how people talk.
Yeah.
And then for factual information, you're probably mainly leaning on Wikipedia. But it's really hard to know because obviously they're feeding in everything they can get their hands on. But it's without any doubt, it's huge. It's like super important for them.
But you're not concerned that the number of Wikipedia users and editors will reduce as reliance on AI increases? Because you could get into a sort of a spiral there, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Where
it's
Wikipedia gets worse and AI gets worse as a result.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that, but always when you have those kind of spiral, there's an equilibrium that you reach. And what does that equilibrium look like? I'm not super concerned about it. I mean, I think part of what gives me the calm is we as a community we love writing an encyclopedia. It's our hobby. Like, we enjoy doing that. And turns out, wow, people like it. They read it a lot. That's great too, right? And it's fun for us, but we've never thought, at the Wikimedia Foundation, we don't obsess over traffic numbers. We don't obsess, partly because we're not an advertising-driven website. So, like, we don't collect data and all that. And so, we're just like, oh, okay, well, great. People like us. That's fun, Obviously, for the funding, right, it's important that when people get knowledge, they understand, like, actually supporting Wikipedia is quite important because it's giving you this human curated sort of amazing thing for free. That's great. So yeah, I mean, you have to think about it a little bit, but at least right now we're not seeing an immediate threat.
Where in the world are you blocked? Where do people try and close down Wikipedia? And is there anything you can do about it?
So we are currently only blocked in China, as far as I know. I mean, things happen day to day, but we were blocked for about 3 years in Turkey. And we fought that in the courts in Turkey. We fought all the way to the Supreme Court and won. And therefore we're unblocked. And it's a landmark decision in Turkish law that they can't just block websites. So great, good news. And we're very popular in Turkey as a result, because I think a lot of people in Turkey are concerned about authoritarianism and sort of the path that the government might be taking. But yeah, currently China, and what can we do about it? Not much. I mean, they block it on their own network. Obviously, well, we still have users in China. People use VPNs, and, in lots of places. That's really important. There was a time when we used to be filtered in a lot of different countries where they would block certain pages. So when we moved to being encrypted, so you go to Wikipedia's HTTPS, like when you go to your bank rather than just HTTP, like most websites are these days, encrypted, then they no longer have the policy option of blocking particular pages. It's all or nothing. And we actually thought at that time, well, we'll see what happens. We think some of these countries may just block us completely. They didn't. So we're available, throughout the Middle East and, places you might think would be uncomfortable with some of the content of Wikipedia. But I think they made that policy decision because Wikipedia is just too awesome, like people need it and they use it. And, so maybe they're not happy that, Wikipedia describes topics about human sexuality that are very taboo to talk about there. But, it's like, well, we can't do without Wikipedia.
And what's the main cost of Wikipedia? I mean, is it servers?
No, I mean, yeah, servers are a part, bandwidth is a part, but it's very human Wikipedia. So we have local chapters that we fund all around the world who are doing outreach, we partner with galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. There's that sort of thing. There's dealing with the press. There's keeping the website running is a part of it. Accounting, finance, all the operations of a nonprofit, but surprisingly inexpensive considering, the magnitude of it. I mean, our budget compared to any other top 50 website property is tiny. But, we manage.
And because the other thing that's striking about Wikipedia is sort of how lo-fi it is, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it hasn't really changed as a look.
We like it.
You get a picture and you get a load of text. And
it's great.
Do you think that is something that will change, should change?
No, I think we sort of did a page redesign, which most people probably didn't notice. I don't know when it was, 2-3 years ago. There's more white space on the page and sort of elements that were sort of modernized a little bit. But, you don't want to change that fundamental because it actually really works well for an encyclopedia. I always joke, we're not going to become TikTok or something. And, we'll probably have more video over the years and more sort of animated illustrations of things like the internal combustion engine and what, you can imagine a few technical changes, but the fundamental, it just really works really well. Like Albert Einstein, here's who he was and here's what he's done. And there's a picture of him.
Because I've heard you say we'll be here in 100 years. There aren't many institutions or things that you can say confidently, I'll be here in 100 years. How confident are you?
Yeah, I'm very confident. Like we run the Wikimedia Foundation in a very cost-conscious, conservative way. We build our reserves. We've got an endowment fund that's a separate nonprofit that has sort of is about planning for the long term, about safety in the long term. A lot of our major donors donate there because they don't want us to just spend their money. It's more of a legacy kind of idea of like keep Wikipedia safe. And then because we're community driven, and as long as people are interested in having some fun writing an encyclopedia together, I think we'll be here.
Having thought for a couple of years, I suppose, writing this book about trust, what is trust?
What is trust? Well, I mean, for me, the thing that defines trust, not as an epistemological definition of trust, but the thing that defines it for me is a deliberate vulnerability. Like if I trust you, I'm letting go of control. I'm saying, I trust that you're going to do the thing. I'm not going to control what you're doing. I'm going to just say, I'm going to trust you. So for example, at Wikipedia, it's very open for editing. Like you can come in, you can make your first edit without getting permission from anyone. And we're extending that trust, which is, still a bit shocking when we think about it in the context of Wikipedia, but there are places here in London you can go in and ask for food and they'll give you food right up front and not even ask for money until the very end, and they trust that you aren't going to just run away. And we call it a restaurant, and it's not that exciting, right? Trust is really a fundamental part of human life and human culture. One of the things we say in the book is if we were as horrible about trust, if we weren't trustworthy, broadly speaking, we would have gone extinct a long time ago. Like, we have to cooperate to survive, and we like cooperating. So, yeah.
But do you think trust is sort of almost under threat by the times we live in? Contested times, argumentative times, tribal. Are we trusting people less now than we should?
So the Edelman Trust Barometer survey does show a big drop in trust over the last decades, not just since social media, like over decades. Trust in journalism, trust in politics, and so forth. At the same time, on a day-to-day basis with each other, we mostly still trust each other in all the usual kinds of ways. So there is this moment in culture where there is a trust crisis. And, I think there's a lot of things we need to do to get back to a culture of trust. And one of the things we need to do is talk about trust and sort of insist upon politicians who are trustworthy is like super important. And, and I think that is beginning to happen. I mean,
do you think, because you swim in the world of politics, your wife, who you mentioned, Kate, obviously worked for Tony Blair.
Yeah.
Do you think politicians are untrustworthy?
Well, we can always be super cynical, and of course there's always untrustworthy politicians around. I do think that we have had some particularly untrustworthy politicians. Donald Trump comes to mind. I think for most people, someone who, his relationship with the truth is tenuous at best. And people are aware that people voted for him not because he's honest and trustworthy, but because of other reasons. And people realize he does say a lot of stuff, it's not necessarily the most sort of fact-bound guy.
But if you're sort of a modern sort of, you're the prime minister, right? You're Keir Starmer now, and you go, well, I read these principles, and I think, well, we have a manifesto. We say what we're going to do. We say what we're about. We're pretty transparent. We try and deliver what we do. We don't always get it right, but we try and do what we said we'd do. Why am I not trusted?
Well, I think there's a long history, right? And I think, I would say in this country, one of the key moments, defining moment in recent history was when we all saw the poor Queen sitting on her own at the funeral because COVID restrictions and all of that, the funeral of her husband. And then we find out later they were having a party in number 10 the night before. And I think people were just fed up with that. They're like, we can't trust these people. They're telling us what to do and they're clearly not following the rules themselves. And they lost the election. I think as much because of reasons like that as for policy reasons and so forth. So I think that was, for me, a moment of hope in terms of, are people getting fed up with untrustworthy politicians? And should we start to demand it more in our culture that, when a politician screws up, they apologize. Sometimes they even resign rather than just, blag their way through it. And, but, it doesn't happen overnight. And I do think it's, with politics, politics is a brutal sport. And so there are always going to be people who criticize whatever you do. That's for sure. And so I think politicians have to have a pretty thick skin. But the risk for them in that having a thick skin is that they stop listening. And they stop saying, well, it doesn't matter if I'm trustworthy or not. They're going to hate me anyway. Okay, it does matter. I think we should be vocal about that. It matters. Things don't always work out and people make mistakes. And, that one person in that job screwed it up massively. That's okay. It's not.
And that's where you are very different, I think, to most business leaders, if you like, where if you criticize what they do, people get defensive and they say, no, this is what we're doing. Criticize Wikipedia, you tend to say, well, okay, we'll have a look at it.
I try to. And I try to encourage us all to be like that, is to say, hold on a second, this isn't working. We need to really think a lot about trust.
Jimmy Wales, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your ways to change the world. I hope you enjoyed that. You can watch all of these interviews on the Channel 4 News YouTube channel. Until next time, bye-bye.